Guys, what are we doing?
What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
We got a show.
We do?
Show?
The season's
Yeah.
over.
The show. What do you see this? Men's Lacrosse ACC Championship. It's coming up next week.
Next week?
Yeah. We got a show. 5 minutes. Come on. We
5 minutes?
5 minutes. Go get
How do you expect me to turn into a show?
All right. Well, Cuse Countdown's about to start, and we'll see if Srikar and Jordan make it back. Hope you can stick with us. As you can see, they have not made it back. I'm Ethan Frank. Welcome to Cuse Countdown. Guys, here you are.
We made it just in time.
Take a seat.
Just in time.
Do I look good?
You guys look great. Okay, no
like you
worries.
never
No
don't look
worries.
good.
Oh, thank you.
You guys always look good. Okay. Well, now we can start the show. Officially, welcome into Cuse Countdown. I'm Ethan Frank, that's Jordan Leonard, and Srikar Rajendran previewing Syracuse's path in the ACC Men's Lacrosse Championship taking place down in Charlotte, North Carolina next week. So guys, let's get into the path of how Syracuse got here. The ACC schedule up to this point started off, Jordan, with a game against Duke on a Wednesday night in the Dome.
Yeah, that Wednesday night in the Dome was really good for Syracuse. It's honestly, if you look at the schedule, it was the most complete game Syracuse has played all year. They won 10-4. The defense was outstanding in this game. John O'Dirna's squad was holding Duke down. Duke didn't score for almost 25 minutes bridging halves, and they did it by taking away Duke sharing the ball. 3 of 4 Duke goals were unassisted, and they did this without actually even winning faceoffs. They only won 35% of them. Syracuse, probably the best overall game they have played all season long.
Well, I actually completely agree with that sentiment, and I'd start by saying it's far and away the best defensive game of the year. I mean, airtight defense against two of the best attackmen in the nation in Brendan O'Neill and Dyson Williams. And you can see right there, 10-4, 36 shots even. So whatever shots Duke was getting, they weren't falling, and that only helps Will Mark, who had a fantastic game in net. I think this game helped him do well down the stretch. And I really like to refer to this game as the game where Gary Gait truly got over the hump. Yes, he beat a ranked opponent in Johns Hopkins, but this was the statement performance. You know, an all-around complete game against one of the best teams in the nation. I mean, that is a statement win right there.
You could tell how the Syracuse players felt about that win after the game, what they thought of the opponent and what it would do for the team moving forward. And moving forward from that was a win against Hobart for the Krause-Simmons Trophy, and then a matchup at Notre Dame, a team that has had a lot of success against Syracuse in the past, and Srikar, that continued.
It really did. And although Syracuse did do their best to hang in this game, I mean, it was ultimately a 2-goal game at the end of the day. I think it was a good test. You know, the top-ranked team in the nation, there were a lot of offensive miscues on Syracuse's part, though. But everything that happened in this one that went bad for SU, you know, you kind of look at it with a sense of optimism because they hung in there and because they kept it close. So in a matchup against Notre Dame again, I think this team should have some confidence knowing that a lot went wrong and yet things also kind of went right.
Yeah, I mean, the optimism, I think, is the word that you mentioned right there. They only lost 14-12, and they started out so poorly. Notre Dame went up 3-1, then 6-3, then 12-6. They were down by 6 goals, and they ended up losing by only 2. Syracuse played very poorly in that game. You look at the faceoff wins. Notre Dame 20-9. Syracuse, again, did not play well at the faceoff X, but found a way to come back in the fourth quarter, make it a game. If they get out to a hotter start against Notre Dame, if they play them again, I don't see why not Syracuse can make it a closer game and maybe even get a win against the #1 team in the country.
So we'll see if there's a rematch between those two teams in the ACC title game coming up a week from Sunday down in Charlotte. So after Syracuse lost in South Bend, it took a quick turnaround to a trip to Ithaca to take on its upstate New York rival Cornell. And then after that, it was a trip to North Carolina after 10 days off in Jordan. It was a little herky-jerky at the end, but the Orange got it done.
Herky-jerky is probably the best word you could say. They started out as slow as you can against North Carolina. They were down 3-0, especially after that game against Cornell where they were up by 6 goals in the fourth quarter and they ended up losing. They have that week off. Gary Gay talked about it throughout that week. Rust versus rest. They looked a lot rusty. I mean, they played horribly to start that game, but this is really the Joey Spallina game. If you look at the ACC schedule, he had 1 goal, but 5 assists. Joey Spallina is a straight playmaker. He's one of the reasons why Syracuse won this game because he forges the path for everybody else. It was the balanced scoring attack for Syracuse that got it done in this one, that held off North Carolina. And you could call this a trap game because North Carolina is the worst team in the ACC, but they're still a very quality team, and getting the win on the road is still good for Syracuse.
I mean, this was an absolute game of runs. SU goes up by 6 goals. They go up 10-4. And yet UNC keeps chipping away, coming back into the game. That just can't happen against better competition, especially when you're going to see Duke or UVA next. Like, those teams are going to make you pay. You can't have this turn into a game of runs, because if they keep clawing back, you lose that momentum and suddenly you find yourselves in the weeds.
So this game clinched Syracuse a spot in the tournament with their second ACC win of the season. And then a week after that, it's the regular season finale in the Dome against a top 5 team in Virginia. Paul Gates, number 19, going up into the rafters. And Srikar, this is a game that Syracuse wins and then becomes a top 2 seed in this tournament. What exactly did this win mean?
You know, I'll come out firing and I'll say this is the biggest win of the year. And I think this was the biggest win of the Gary Gate era. I mean, you look at this game and it was an absolute thriller. I mean, this was another game of runs where each team was responding to each other, and you come out linking like who is going to come out on top. I mean, this was a statement win. Syracuse showed they could handle Virginia's responses in another game of runs. That's an extremely promising thing right there, and a huge momentum boost for the Orange. So when I look at this game, especially being the last tune-up before the ACC tournament, really impressed.
Yeah, I think if you look at this on the back half of the schedule, coming off that Cornell game, Syracuse gets the win against North Carolina. Still doesn't add too much to the schedule. You play Virginia. This is really where you show who you are. And they dominated. Virginia is a really good team. And you look at it, 21 face-off wins. They beat Virginia at the face-off category. They peppered on offense. They put so many shots on cage, and they really showed they can fight through adversity. You look at the games earlier in the season, Army, Maryland, you lose in overtime. The Johns Hopkins win and the Duke win, you were comfortable in a lead. This was the one game where they showed they can come back when they're down. They were down by 4 in the fourth quarter. They come back and win the game. That's really what Syracuse needs to have shown going into the NCAA tournament.
So 3-1 in the league going into this tournament, but I think it's time we have a real discourse about Gary Gate. This is his 3rd season after moving over from the women's program, hugely improved from the first 2 seasons. Obviously, the atrocious record in 2022, marginal improvements last year. And this year, it kind of feels, Jordan, like it's the right buttons of talent plus player development plus coaching on all sides of the ball.
I think Gary's been the best this season overall. If you look at the players that he brought in, Jake Stevens, Sam English, and then Mason Cohen at the faceoff X, and also the coaching staff. John O'Dearna on defense. Dave Petramala is a great defensive coordinator, but John O'Dearna has been amazing this year. The defense is so much better than it was last year. They're playing a lot more free. The transfers that he brought in the transfer portal, the #1 class in the transfer portal, by the way, he's pushing all the right buttons this year where Syracuse is firing on all cylinders.
Well, you said it. It's the coaching staff he's assembled with Pat Marsh and John O'Dearna. He has all the pieces in place. Even in terms of roster, I mean, he's done a great job with everything he's been given. And this tournament run for both the ACC and the NCAA tournament, it's not really a do-or-die situation, but it is a good measuring stick for where this squad truly is, because I think they've shown marked improvement when looking at previous seasons in the Gate era and then this season, night and day.
Yeah, and you look at that full screen right there, you look at the face-off percentage. Gary Gate knew he had to get a better guy at the face-off X. That's astronomical when you go from winning under 50% to almost 60% at the X. Last year, the offense was very efficient, but they didn't get the ball enough. This year, they're getting the ball enough. The defense is getting some time off, and they're firing on all cylinders.
A lot of improvements over the prior 2 years to this season for Gary Gate and Syracuse. A whole lot still more to come. We'll preview Syracuse's potential 2 opponents, both teams they beat this season, Duke and Virginia. We'll see how those 2 teams are faring coming into a potential tournament matchup with the Orange coming up on Cuse Countdown. Hey, and welcome back into Cuse Countdown. Thanks so much for sticking with us. Ethan, Frank, Jordan, Leonard, and Srikar Rajendran previewing next week's ACC Men's Lacrosse Tournament down in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's back. It's a really exciting time. And let's look at the two teams Syracuse as the number 2 seed might play and go back to when Virginia and Duke matched up a couple of weeks ago. And the Blue Devils are just the Cavaliers' kryptonite, Jordan.
You mentioned it. They haven't beaten them since in over 20 years in the regular season, and that really happened again. Duke just got off to a really hot start in that first quarter. Matthew Nunes, who is a great goalie in college lacrosse, one of the best in the ACC, gave up 7 goals and no saves in the first quarter, and it was all downhill there for Virginia. Their defense has been solid all year. Their defense has been solid all year, but Duke's attack was just on fire. Josh Zawada, 5 goals, 6 points. Brendan O'Neill, 4 goals, 1 assist. Dyson Williams, 3 goals. There's nothing stopping them. Syracuse showed they could in their matchup. Virginia certainly could not.
Yeah, huge win for Duke, and as you mentioned, a well-rounded one at that. The attack puts up 18 goals. The defense steps up too. 12 goals is the fewest amount UVA has had all year. I mean, Duke is capable of shutting down these high-caliber attacks, and that's something SU needs to keep in mind come tournament time because they have a great attack themselves. UVA doesn't play their best game, but only a short time later, we saw how they hung with Syracuse.
And we know how good these two teams are, and even though maybe they didn't play their best against Syracuse, or in Virginia's case, in this matchup, they are coached by 2 stalwarts of the game in Lars Tiffany for Virginia, John Danowski for Duke. Srikar, when you look at these coaches, what comes to mind? What makes them really good in this sport?
Well, 2 words come to mind, Ethan. Championship pedigree. I think that is the biggest thing with both John Danowski and Lars Tiffany. John Danowski wins titles, NCAA titles at that, in 2010, 2012, and 2013. Lars Tiffany gets his championships in 2019 and 2021. So, I mean, the resumes absolutely speak for themselves. And that championship pedigree, as I mentioned, that's something to fear out of both of these coaches. They've gone the distance. They've had that experience, and that is absolutely invaluable.
You see the stats there on the screen. John Danowski, 12 Final Fours in 17 years as Duke men's lacrosse head coach. I have 2 words written down for these guys. Very laid back for John Danowski and an absolute vibes guy for Lars Tiffany. These are some of the best coaches in the ACC. And then you look at it, they both coach national teams. John Danowski coached the U.S. national team. Lars Tiffany coached the Haudenosaunee national team. These are guys not only coaching in college lacrosse in the ACC, but on the international level.
These are guys who know ball. I think that is a fair statement to say, and I love what you said about Lars there. A vibes guy.
Absolute
He's always
vibes
got
guy.
his wooden stick walking around the field. He is loving the game of lacrosse. So these guys, they know offense. They know ball, as we were saying. When you look at the offenses for these two teams, you got the guys that distribute, you got the guys that score. Jordan, what stands out to you from both of these teams?
Yeah, you look at, you mentioned the guys that distribute and the guys that score. They both have a duo that's pretty lethal. Peyton Cormier and Connor Schellenberger for Virginia, and then Brendan O'Neill and Josh Zawada for Duke. Starting with Virginia, and you look at Cormier and Schellenberger, they can both do everything you really want them to do. Peyton Cormier is an absolute scorer from the wings. Connor Schellenberger can really do it all. He's one of the best players in the country. He's more of a finesse guy than Brendan O'Neill if you want to make a comp between teams. Speaking of Brendan O'Neill, by the way, 250 pounds. That guy is an absolute force, the definition of a bully dodger. And last year he had 97 points, did it all. This year, Duke's team is so good because Josh Zawada is there. He doesn't really have to assist. He doesn't have to be a feeder. He focuses on scoring, which makes Duke even more lethal this year on offense.
Jordan, I swear to you, I'm not trying to rain on your parade here, but you went on that big ramble about Duke, and all I'm thinking is UVA has the more fearsome duo. And it's not that Jake Zawada and Brendan O'Neill aren't fearsome. I'm not saying that at all. But Cormier and Schellenberger, all it takes is one look into the past. I mean, those two were firing shots at will past Will and Mark. Sorry, no pun intended there. But
No, pun fully intended.
Pun fully intended.
We'll
All
take
right,
the
we're gonna
pun.
go
We'll
with
take
that.
the pun.
But these two, they will score at will, right? These guys can get open shots. They know how to circle around cage. They know how to find the perfect quality shots. And that is something that SU saw on full display when they played them. But if you're going to play UVA again, that's something you really have to look out for.
You can't imagine that Syracuse will hold Duke to 4 goals again if they were to match up a second time, and we know how potent Virginia's offense is with that 17 they dropped in the Dome this past Saturday. So when you look over to the other side of the field and the defense, Srikar was talking about Billy Dwan a little bit earlier, and the Syracuse defense. When you look at the defense for these two teams, what stands out? Got to be Cole Kastner for Virginia, right?
100%, and he actually just committed to Stanford for men's basketball, which goes to show you how much of an athletic specimen this guy is. I mean, 6'7", 215 pounds. It's tough to get past a guy with that frame, and I think he shows it on a game-by-game basis. Excuse me. But that is what really sticks out about Kastner. Kenny Brower, tough as well. Great anticipation. He's really instinctive. I mean, these two guys are so tough to crack, and I think when SU faces off against them again, it's going to be trouble because it's tough to get past guys with that frame.
I mean, you got guys on the first and second team of the midseason All-American listing. Kenny Brower on the first team, Cole Kastner on the second team. 6'7", 215, you mentioned that. The difference is Cole Kastner is more of a roamer. He plays a lot more kind of in-space defense. Kenny Brower really shut down Joey Spallina when they played Duke. It'll be interesting to see who matches up when Syracuse plays against either of these two teams and how they play Joey Spallina.
It'll be interesting to see. You would think that Duke would be the better matchup considering how Syracuse fared against them. But then you look at the Virginia side of things, Joey Spallina didn't have any points against Virginia. So really, who is to say? Well, I guess we'll find out in a little bit of time. Now to focus on the special teams, the goaltenders in this potential matchup. Matthew Nunes for Virginia, Patrick Jamison for Duke. Jordan, who has the edge here?
If you're looking at just the game against Syracuse, you would say Patrick Jamison just because of how well he played. Matthew Nunes could not stop anything in the first quarter when Syracuse played Virginia, but there's a big difference between these two. Patrick Jamison, a freshman. Matthew Nunes, a Grizzly veteran. He has 10 games with 10 or more saves this season, and it's not even just his defense. He gets Virginia out in transition. If you watched that Syracuse-Virginia game, it was nonstop going back and forth because Nunes makes a save, gets it out, and defense is a really good offense if you're Virginia. Patrick Jamison is just a brick wall. A 57% save rate, had 14 saves against Syracuse. Both are really good, but I think Matthew Nunes, because he gets it into the offense, is a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd say Jamison is actually more of a threat than Nunes. SU did blow out Duke, but the score was 10-4. I mean, they only scored 10 goals on Jamison compared to 18 on Nunes. So I think the Syracuse attack had their way more against Matthew Nunes. Both goalies are tough. Nunes did make some big saves against SU. I gotta be fair here, but judging off history, there's one clear answer for me, and I think the tougher matchup is seeing Jamison.
So we've literally talked about every single aspect of these two teams' rosters. It's a shame there's no offensive linemen in lacrosse. So you could talk about big bodies like Joe Alt, J.C. Latham, Alona Fashanu.
If you look at Cole Kastner against
he
Owen
is a big
Hiltz,
guy.
that's a big
He
guy.
is a big guy. We talked about the big guys. If only there were some bigger guys we could have talked about. That would have made this a little bit more fun. When you look at this matchup, who would be a better opponent for Syracuse in this game?
I would tend to think it's Duke. I mean, this team has confidence from blowing them out earlier in the season. We look at that UVA game, that was a dogfight. That was a game where Virginia easily could have won. That Duke game, never in doubt. I really felt like SU just controlled that game from the get-go. I think John O'Dearna will have a plan for the Duke attack again, and the defense is going to execute. I mean, Duke is a team with talent everywhere, all right? But UVA, I don't know. That just seems to me like the tougher matchup. I think Duke would be a lot better for SU.
I agree with you, Srikar. I think Duke is the better matchup just because they're not as deep. They might have a better big three in Brendan O'Neill, Dyson Williams, and Josh Suwada, but Syracuse showed that they can control that in the first matchup. That Virginia game, honestly, probably took a year or two off of my life, just how crazy that game was. I think Virginia is a lot more dangerous, and Syracuse has had a lot less success against Virginia in recent history. So Duke's the harder matchup.
So Syracuse rooting for Duke against North Carolina this weekend, and Virginia not to be that number 3 seed in the ACC tournament. All right, we still got a little bit more here to come on Cuse Countdown, the Countdown Choice Awards. The Cuse is walking the red carpet. We're going to hand out some hardware. We'll be right back here on CC.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Oh boy. Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Dun 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 dun. It's the Countdown Choice Awards. We got some hardware to hand out from this season for Syracuse. You see all the guys up here that made a difference this season. You guys ready for the Countdown Choice Awards?
I'm ready to hand out some hardware.
I'm your host, Ethan Frank. Our award presenters here are Jordan Leonard and Srikar Rajendran. So our first award is going to be the sleeper, the guy who made an impact a little bit under the radar for Syracuse this season. So Jordan, who are you handing this out to?
Thank you. I got to give it to Jake Stevens. He really came in and did a lot for Syracuse. He's not the star-studded guy like an Owen Hiltz, like a Joey Spallina, even like a Will Mark, but he does a lot for this team. On the face-offs, when he's on the wing, he picks up so many ground balls. He scores, does everything you need him to do. He scored the first goal of the run that won the game against Virginia. He scored the final 2 goals in the first top 5 win of the year against Johns Hopkins. He averages almost 3 ground balls a game, and he's not a face-off man. He wins the possessions for Syracuse and really helps the team overall a lot more than people realize.
You know, I gotta go with the player who's been really the most reliable on the attack all season, and that is Christian Muley, okay? This guy has scored in all but 2 games this season, and even in the games he didn't score, he still tallied a point. Christian Muley is a guy who knows how to flow with the offense that Pat Marsh has set up, and he fits that perfectly. So I think he is my super sleeper here, and I think he is well deserving of this award.
Adding that super in there really makes it a sleeper.
No, he really is a sleeper. Yeah, what can I say? It's a good little alliterative thing that I can throw on there.
Yeah, your vocabulary is unlike anyone I've ever met.
Adding some
Srikar.
alliteration.
Yeah, he's alliterating. All right, I'll take that back, please. We got some more awards to hand out. Christian and Jake, congratulations, and we'll hopefully see you walking down the red carpet for some more pictures after the show. All right, so from a positive, we got to transition to a little bit of a negative. We got an award here, Srikar, for the biggest disappointment this season.
Oh man, this feels wrong. I'm giving out
I
an
don't know
award
if
for
you
the
just-
biggest
yeah,
disappointment.
I don't know if you need a trophy for that.
I mean, okay, we're gonna give it out anyways. You ever heard of the golden raspberries? I mean, this is exactly akin with that. So, in that regard, very difficult pick because I don't think there were a lot of big disappointments on this team. I mean, what more can you say about one of the top teams in the nation? I'm gonna go with Finn Thompson. All right, this guy had a really, really strong second half of the season, but that first half marred by inconsistency. 3 out of his first 4 games, he was held scoreless. You know, and for that, for having an inconsistent season, I want him to see him be more consistent for a whole year, and that's what makes the pick difficult. I want to see him come out the gates firing and hold that throughout a whole year. That's what made me go with Finn Thompson.
That makes sense. I'm going to go with Jackson Birtwistle, so a different midfielder. He missed the 3 games to start the season, but if you look at it, he had 27 goals last year, only 11 this season, is scoreless in his last 3, and he has 0 goals in 7 of the 13 games this year. This guy was really a person that Syracuse thought was going to be big on that midfield entering the season. He was hurt to start the year, which kind of hurt him a little bit, but he hasn't gotten it done this season. A lot of people have hopped him, a lot of those freshmen that are now sophomores, so Jackson Birtwistle, a big disappointment this season for Syracuse.
Wow. Some strong words there, guys. I don't know. Hopefully, the guys don't see this because they might take this trophy and spike it on the ground. So we'll keep
Don't want to
this,
put a dent in it.
Yeah, we'll keep this safe back here. All right, one more award to hand out here on the Countdown Choice Awards, and that is the granddaddy of them all, the MVP. Jordan, it goes to?
Goes to someone that everyone is thinking of, or maybe not, goes to Joey. He does everything for this team. He is such a playmaker. He has 47 assists. When he's on the field, he might not score any points like he did against Virginia, but he sets everyone up. He's taking double teams. He's taking the best long ball. He has 76 points on the season. His presence on the field for Syracuse is so important. You go back to that UNC game. They almost lost it on that final possession. Who was there to pick up the ground ball and throw it back towards the UNC end to really delay that possession? It was Joey Spallina. Even though he might not score as much as people really want him to, he is the team's MVP because of the things that he brings to the field.
No, I 100% agree, and I think Joey Spallina is actually one of those guys where the play style changed, but his production was still kind of there. Not in terms of what's on the stat sheet, but I think when you look at the impact he has on this team, the chemistry he has with his teammates, it's palpable. It's there. Another guy who's had a lot of chemistry with his teammates, and the guy I'm giving MVP. Where's Will Mark? Is he here?
He's over here. He's
all the way over there.
He's
Okay,
over here.
I'm on the
He's
completely
over here.
opposite side. So Will Mark is my MVP. I mean, this guy has been absolutely incredible for the Orange this season. I'd go as far as saying Mark was the best goalie in the country. From February 1st to now, Will Mark has notched double-digit saves in every game. And if we're doing the math here, if I'm doing my scheduling math right, that's 11 straight games. I mean, that's really impressive. And I think he has really made his mark on this team. He's made crucial saves when this team needed him most. Easily the MVP of this team this year.
Srikar, I don't know if I told you, but before the season, I said that Will Mark and Brick Wall are synonyms. So
Yeah,
I agree with you. Yeah. He's been great this year.
Wow,
He's been great.
congrats to you on that great prediction. Good job.
I was right.
Well, that's all the awards we have to hand out tonight. And the best thing of all, Joey Spallina and Will Mark, great human beings. So they deserve MVP on and off the
all
field.
about.
All right, we're wrapping things up here on Cuse Countdown. These guys are going to do a little bit of bracketology, see what's going on with the NCAA tournament after the ACC tournament. Stick with us here on Citrus TV.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
There's one thing you can never have sex without.
It's not something you buy.
Or something you take.
In fact, there's only one way to get it.
It has to be given to you, freely.
It's consent.
Because sex without it isn't sex.
It's rape. Consent.
If you don't get it, you don't get it.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Hey, for the final time, welcome back to Cuse Countdown. Ethan, Frank, Jordan, Leonard, and Srikar Rajendran. Just a couple of minutes left, guys. So let's take a little bit, we know what's going on with the ACC tournament. When you look at where Syracuse is in the grand scheme of things for the NCAA tournament, the Orange are in a good spot when it comes to bracketology.
Yeah, if you look at the bracket that was just released by Inside Lacrosse, then Syracuse is in a great spot. They're the 4 seed. They're playing St. Joe's in that first round. That's as really good of a matchup as you're going to get if you're a top 4 seed. And then they would play potentially either Army, which would be a revenge game, or Johns Hopkins. They already beat them earlier this year as their first top 5 win. And the fact that you're going to avoid potentially Notre Dame, Virginia, or Duke until you get to the semifinals, that's a great line for Syracuse. Huge.
Yeah, it is huge. I think they'll get past St. Joe's. I think you and me both agree there. That sets up an interesting matchup with Johns Hopkins, all right? They played close earlier this year with Syracuse coming out on top. I think Syracuse is going to get the better of Johns Hopkins in that game just because we're at a very different point from where both of these teams were earlier in the season, and that sets up a huge showdown with Notre Dame, which is going to be a tough test. So I'd expect a deep run in the ACC and the NCAA tournament.
Would there be a team on here that would scare you in the first round?
Honestly, if you look at Penn or Penn State, that would scare me a little
anyone
bit.
from Pennsylvania. St. Joe's also in Pennsylvania. Any team from the state of Pennsylvania
really
might be
good
scary.
teams from the state of Pennsylvania.
All right, so we know what's going on with the bracketology, but let's go back to the ACC tournament and wrap things up with some predictions. Srikar, how far are the Orange making it in Charlotte?
Ethan, before I give my prediction, I've heard some rumblings, and I've heard that this is your last show at Citrus TV. So I wanted to take some time to, honor you, let you have your moment here. We want to thank you for all you've contributed to this station, and me and Jordan both appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, Ethan, you've done a lot for Citrus TV. I mean, look at how many photos you have on here. That just shows how much a lot.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, guys. Some of my best moments on here, some of my not so best moments on here. So I really appreciate it, guys. And your prediction, Srikar.
All right, my prediction is I think SU has a deep run in the ACC tournament. I think they're going to make the finals and lose, and the big culprit is those playing a full 60 minutes of lacrosse. I think that's going to be the issue. I think it'll come back to bite him again.
Srikar, I'm buying into the Kool-Aid. Gary Gates says this team is on an uptrend right now. They've won 2 in a row. They just got a big win against Virginia. They're winning the ACC tournament.
Wow.
They're beating UVA or Duke in the first round in an absolute revenge game against Notre Dame in the ACC championship.
I just can't get over some of the pictures that are in here. I mean, you got like what's going on here? All right, thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for watching, CC. We appreciate it. We'll see how Syracuse does in the ACC tournament down in Charlotte. Thanks so much for watching, and good night.